Hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, staying healthy. We're still living through interesting times. It looks like our lockdown order here in LA County is going to be through May 15th. Kind of interesting because that's what Raymond James was kind of projecting, potentially scenario one, maybe stay-at-home orders being lifted in the, right around Memorial Day. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's a lot to know kind of going ahead. In terms of, again, this is our sixth webinar in this series. We're committed to doing this every week. We're trying to change up the topic so that we're just not covering the same thing over and over. Hopefully you guys are finding this to be valuable. Again, thanks for bearing with us through these times. I know lacking that human interaction, face-to-face communication is tough on everyone. But this has been a nice way to connect with everyone. So, we're working on we have about half our people still coming in as we're a necessary business, and we're doing our best to actually stay in front of you and to help you guys through this challenging time. So today we're going to go through what I call from chaos to clarity, the case for optimism. We're certainly not in the we haven't covered the gamut or in terms of turning the corner and actually getting to the clarity piece yet. But I think what I'm trying to really position here is where are we and what's likely going to transpire over the next couple of years, and give you our thoughts. And so our outline for today is we're going to go through just kind of a quick COVID-19 update, talk about the economic impacts, what's happening, what I would call headwinds and tailwinds with the economy. The roaring 20s, some of you have heard me talk about this before, really talking about the roaring 20s and really not the old roaring 20s, the case for 2020, and then strategies for the eventual recovery. So I think hopefully one of the things that we all should be feeling is that eventually we're going to recover through this. The timing of it, nobody knows. It's anybody's guess. We all have opinions. It's been interesting to learn from everybody how we look at this differently, but we know it's tough. Everyone's had to adjust their schedule, adjust how they're handling things. And that's for just the average person who is staying healthy through this. We know it's a lot harder on families. So thoughts go out with everybody. And again, we're just happy to be here. Hopefully we're a voice of reason, in these challenging times. So this slide is our current reality. And so one of the things that is clear to us is that the essentially longest economic expansion in the history of the US is coming to an end. We're not officially in a recession, but we are in a recession. So an official recession is 2 consecutive quarters of decline. We haven't gotten there yet. So it's clear that we'll likely get there after the second quarter. But essentially, for all intents and purposes, we are in a recession. The question becomes, is this going to be a very deep but short recession, or is this going to extend? Again, we're not really sure what this is going to look like. But if you look at this chart here, it shows the longest economic expansion, which started in 2009. So in 2009 was when this began. We did talk about that our economy has been healthy. We did a workshop just at the beginning of the year that talked about that our economy, we were in an environment where our economy was quite healthy. So, now we're dealing with obviously this is the first virus-induced recession. So we've had lots of other reasons that put us into recession, but this is the first virus-induced, which is pretty remarkable. So the note I have here, changing of the guard. Most businesses really thrived through this last economic period. We think this next economic period of growth is going to be the best businesses thrive, not everybody. And that's where leadership's really going to matter. And that's where culture is going to matter. The businesses, whether they're small businesses or the large businesses, those that have an amazing culture where people want to work and employees want to, and customers want to shop and have the leadership intact to kind of navigate through these tough times are the ones that are going to thrive. Hopefully, as a small business, we're going to have that amazing culture and leadership that we're going to be able to help drive to our clients and have an environment where our employees can thrive. But we do think we're going to have a changing of the guard. The last decade, everybody did well. And when I say everybody, of course, not everybody, but the majority of Americans had a very prosperous last 10 years. This next 10 years is going to be a little bit more challenging, but there's going to be a lot of good things happening, especially for those companies and individuals that are positioned to think differently and to be optimistic. So we were pretty early on saying the stimulus was going to be massive and immediate. And it's pretty amazing what the government has actually done in terms of the size of this. Now, what we looked at was phase 3 that just went out a few weeks ago. which was providing some of this payroll relief for small businesses. It was really a small business relief program. Roughly 2.2 trillion was in phases 1 through 3. And you look at how that dwarfs the equivalent of the New Deal and also the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. So this is massive. They just talked the other day about a mainstream lending program that was going to be able to target businesses that are not small business, but kind of that medium tier, and throwing another few $1 trillion at this. So this stimulus is massive. More is coming. These are the phase 4 items that are on the agenda. Infrastructure spending to create more jobs, hazard pay for frontline responders, debt relief for households and individuals. We're seeing some of that already, and then direct funds for hotspot cities. And so phase 4 is coming. This one is probably not going to come as fast because this one has a lot of political mess in it. And it's going to be hard to get our politicians to agree on how to put this into play. So I feel like the first 3 phases, I don't want to say they were easy, but they were a little bit more low-hanging fruit. And that's now passed through, and it is providing immediate relief. I've been getting texts and emails from clients about, oh, they got approved for this loan, they got their PPP money. So money is coming. I know if you turn on the media, they keep blasting everyone, say this money's not coming. We're talking about trying to move a few $1 trillion into the economy. It takes time. The fact that we're getting this done in a few weeks is remarkable, and checks are on their way. So they're coming, and we actually have proof of funding. So the one thing that's been super painful for just us as investors is that the decline we went through, starting in early February, was the fastest 30% decline in the history of our stock market. So if you look at the times in the past, you can see we had the sorry, I'm trying to move some stuff out of the way. We had 1929, it was 31 days. 1987, which stock market crash of 87. 38 days. Look at this. This happened in 22 days. Now, we're now on the heels of that, and we've actually seen the market recover 25%. So I have a question for you. Are we in a bear market, which is a market that's declined over 20%, or are we in a bull market where we have a market that's risen over 20%? Well, technically, in the last 2 months, we're in both. So it's a really weird dynamic to be in. Do we feel good about the fact that we're recovering, or do we still feel the pain from where we came from? And so it's a little bit of a mixed bag. But I think where we're seeing is a little bit more optimism that the world's not coming to an end. We have a ton of challenges still ahead of us. And the thing that gets to be a little bit challenging for investors is that the stock market tends to lead the downside, but also lead the recovery. The economy tends to lag. So when the economic news is at its worst, the stock market's probably recovered. And so I know a lot of people feel like, well, I'll wait till the news gets better. Well, unfortunately, by the time you wait for the news to get better, things have changed. And so that's not a very good investment strategy, is to wait and see. It's to just have a disciplined process, which is what we're trying to implement for our clients. Whoops, all right. So bullish on the U.S. economy. So we are bullish on where the U.S. economy is going, and here's why. So I'm going to cover, I don't want to be totally optimistic on all accounts and talk about that there are no headwinds. There are. So from what could slow this economy down? Regulatory issues, compliance issues, our national debts and deficits, which are 25 trillion and growing, especially with the stimulus. If we're looking at our demographics, we have an aging population, and we have a tight labor market and rising labor costs. And so there are a fair amount of headwinds that are there. But when I actually look at the tailwinds, this is where I get excited. Record low interest rates. We're seeing interest rates on the 10-year, 30-year bonds at record lows. They both dipped in below 1%. And so we're seeing record low interest rates, which allow people to borrow money at cheaper levels. We have cheap and plentiful energy. Here in the US, we are a net exporter of energy, not a net importer like we used to be. And so we have lots of energy. You think about what's going to fuel our economic boom. It's going to be able to be to manufacture things in the US, to rebuild our manufacturing sector. And that's what do you need to do that? You need cheap money to borrow to build. And then you also need cheap and plentiful energy, because if you're going to run facilities, you need to have energy that's inexpensive. And that's what we have right now. A couple other things. If you're looking at the Fed balance sheet, the Fed balance sheet basically means printing money. We're printing money like crazy, and that's helping to kind of get us back on our feet. A lot of people are worried about inflation, but one of the things that we have the benefit of is technology that's built into our economic system is so disinflationary, which means technology has the ability to bring prices down, that even though we are printing money, the inflationary issues are not on the horizon. Not to say they won't be, they're not here yet. Stimulus, 2 trillion plus, that number looks like it's going to be probably over 5 trillion when all is said and done. That's just here in the US. One of the areas that we really think is going to happen, and we're already seeing a little bit of this, is more nationalism versus globalism, really having a focus on taking care of our country, taking care of our needs. And I definitely think that's something we're going to see more of. And again, bringing that manufacturing back home. Technological advancement. That's something that's occurring and is changing, and the pace of change is highly disruptive to so many different industries. And if you've just seen what's been happening just in the last several months, technology has been really that category that's been leading the recovery here, because we're a service-based economy for the most part, and we can still function with the right technology. I'm able to host these meetings. We can actually communicate with each other. We can do business with each other utilizing technology. And also on the home front, technology kind of makes our home not feel so small because we have a lot of things that are accessible to us. And then current tax policy. Tax policy is very favorable, and it might get more favorable. Some of the things that are on the docket is to maybe reverse some of the changes and allow some more deductions back in the system. So current tax policy is very favorable for growth. And so there's a lot of tailwinds, which is why we're bullish on the US economy. So the case for the roaring 20s. So we had a roaring 20s back in the 1920s, and it was a glorious time for our nation. We had massive technological innovation. Now, I know when you look on the left and you say, well, wow, was that really technological innovation? It was. And, it was the vacuum and the refrigerator. Those were the dominant technologies of the time. And now we're looking at the technologies of today, far more sophisticated, at least by our current measure. Artificial intelligence, individual like genome mapping, 3D printing, and 5G. So these are the technologies that are really going to drive the economy moving forward. So some of you have been to a few workshops of mine, might have seen some of these slides that we put together. And there's a portfolio manager with Delaware put together some of these slides, and I think the content is just amazing. So I want to give you some historical perspective on kind of what we're looking at with long-term performance of the markets. And I think a lot of this gets missed when you have volatility. When this volatility occurs, when there's a pandemic, when there's a global recession, when stuff happens and the stock market sells off and unemployment goes up, it kind of throws out a lot of, I guess we could call it rational thinking about, okay, what's likely going to happen, what's really going to happen. And so if you look back over our period of time, and we're going to look at 3 distinct periods. So this one, we're going to look at the flat market, then the expansion, and we're going to look at 3 different cycles. And so we had a flat market basically from the peak of the roaring 20s through the early 50s, where we had the Great Depression, 25% unemployment, and obviously wrapped this up with World War II ending. And then we had a 500% increase in the S&P 500 from 1950 to 1968, when our technology and the innovation really came into light here in the US. And you look at what was the technology at the time: airlines, the interstate highway system, automobiles, and telephones basically being a household item where it had critical mass, where most people were using this as part of their day-to-day. And you think about that time. Now, if you look along here, I'm going to pull my mouse in so you can see. If you look, this is not a straight line. We have these dips. These dips were recessions. We have these dips. So the question becomes, as an investor in this environment, do we care about these dips, or do we care about the direction that it went up 500%? Do we want to lose sight on the up and down, or do we want to pay attention that we were in a massively expansionary environment, and fundamentals really mattered? Then we look at this next period of time. So we had the flat market, which was really the 1970s, where we were coming out of Vietnam, stagflation, we had oil shocks, and then we had 20% mortgage rates. And that was really the decade of the 70s. And if anyone remembers this, when Ronald Reagan took office, the prime rate of interest was 21.75% back in 1981. Remarkable, right? So if you think about this growth that we saw once we got into the 80s, the market went up 1,400%. That means 14 times. Remarkable. And what really happened during that 20-year cycle is we had the biggest impact was the globalization of American brands, basically iconic brands like Coca-Cola, Nike, Procter & Gamble. These were brands that really fueled our growth, fueled our economy, and really put us on the map around the world. And it was really the American brands that drove everything. Also, PC penetration, Microsoft, Intel. people went from the typewriter to a personal computer. And the big box stores, this changed a lot of communities where you had Walmart, Home Depot, Costco, companies that came in where you replaced the local grocery store, the local hardware store. And that changed the landscape of America. And, it changed for better in terms of we kind of demand lower prices. We demand more efficiency. And so if you look at this boom, this period of time, we definitely saw dips along the way. We had the stock market crash here in 1987, and we had some, recessionary environments throughout that period of time. But it was 18 years of massive economic growth. So the key here is you pay attention to the longer term cycles, not the short term noise. We then look at what we've been living through, and this is essentially my working career. I've been doing this since 1997, and so this is my working career. So if you look at where we started this period of time in 2000 was we had the tech wreck or the dot-com bubble. We had September 11th, and then we had the consumer debt bubble collapse, which basically was the financial crisis. And so you look, markets essentially went sideways from 2000 to 2000 and roughly 13, where the markets just went down, back up, back down, and back up. Then we saw the breakout here. And if we look at the breakout, these are the kind of new innovations that we're seeing when we're looking at now we're dealing with a new expansionary time frame where our fundamental change for our economy is going to be in things like food and banking and mobile services and content and treatments for major diseases. I have Teladoc up here, which obviously has been a hot company as of late, and I'm not recommending any particular companies, but it's because of now being stuck at home, but still needing to communicate with your doctor. That's probably going to be more the norm. We're on Zoom right now. Zoom now has obviously been a technology that's been around for a little while, but now the masses are now going to be using this to communicate with family, to communicate through business. So it's pretty remarkable what we're seeing. So when you look at that period of time, we do think we're going to see this growth going for this next decade, and that there's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of people that are worried about a lot of the short-term issues. And we think it's a mistake to be too short-term focused, too nearsighted, and not look at the potential of these major changes. So I did want to share with you just a couple resources. So this is coming from Raymond James. We don't manage portfolio just based on certain sectors. We don't get too specific on we're going to have this industry and not this one. We do believe in broad diversification, but I wanted to share with you just kind of our Raymond James philosophy. And we definitely have this mixed into the portfolios, but it's not in all these different sector funds. Where their overweight is in technology, communication services, financials, and healthcare. And so you can see like underweight utilities, energies, things like that. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of that. And again, we're more broadly diversified, but we do have some tilts, and we're going to have some technology. We definitely have a overweight towards technology and communication services and financials. And so I just wanted to share that with you, but I also want to then dig into a little bit of the weeds on some of these themes that we're looking at. And so when we talk about what some of these themes are for the roaring 20s, let's just go through these line by line. So higher quality foods. One of the things that we know as consumers, we've changed our habits from pure like fast food to more fast casual. A lot more money is going into organics. There's massive growth in the organic space, and traditional food categories are essentially flat. So that's obviously a big push, and we're seeing a lot of innovation there. Active lifestyle is another one. Now, us being quarantined, not being able to go to the gym is kind of forcing more people to go out, walk with their kids, ride their bikes, do that. Hopefully most of you already had some of those good habits, but I know now it's kind of maybe bringing back some of those good habits of actually getting outside. But an active lifestyle is a trend that we were already embarking upon with outdoor experiences, prioritizing exercise as part of our daily life. And that movement's continuing on. And this actually is probably going to cement this even more. Mobile services. Clearly, the advent of the iPhone and smartphones, the way we use diet and exercise on our phones, banking. I know for my mom, she doesn't use her phone or her iPad to do her banking, even though she has access to it on her iPad. She still wants to go into a physical bank. My kids probably are never going to set foot in a bank, and I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. And so the way we bank, the way we use financial technology is going to change dramatically. The way we communicate is going to change, and technology is changing and altering the way we can get access to information. And then dating. You think about how people are connecting. I don't know the numbers, but it's over 20% of people that get married are finding themselves online. So it's a pretty high, it's a change to how we used to do things in the past. Medical breakthroughs. So medical breakthroughs is another big piece of where the themes of the Roaring Twenties, and this is just a few that we're listing here, but genome mapping. So I'm not a medical expert. So if you think about just genome mapping, basically what it allows for is individualized treatments where you're actually able to get treatments, whether it's pharmaceuticals or surgeries or whatever you need for yourself, supplements that are individually based on your DNA, based on your makeup. And that's going to vastly improve our health and the treatment of sickness. Opioid crisis, obviously we know there's a big issue with that with pain management, and there's a lot of alternatives to the opioid crisis, which is great. And then virtual healthcare, I think that's something that's come into play recently with us being on, staying at home, is where you have efficiencies for insurance companies, doctors, and patients to be able to connect in this manner. And that, treatment, there's also a lot of virtual like monitoring of people's blood sugar and blood pressure and all of these things. These are all this virtual healthcare should bring the cost down because monitoring it by technology is going to make it simpler. And it's going to eventually be improving the lives of us as Americans. And so lots of medical breakthroughs. I think things we can't even really fathom, because I think that's where the biggest breakthroughs of this decade are going to be, is on the medical side of things. And then the network. We're all connected through Wi-Fi. We're all connected through, I guess in the future here, 5G. And what's happening there? Well, new content. So, streaming media, social networking, interactive gaming. And so if you actually look at where we're seeing growth, people are going onto their Facebook, going onto their Instagram far more. And then interactive gaming is a big thing where you're competing and you're doing your video games against other people. It's highly addictive. And so, new content generation is going to continue to drive the world. And we've already seen the changes that have occurred just in the last 5 years and a lot of the behaviors that we have as individuals. Financial technology, again, the bank goes to your phone, Internet of everything. So having connected solutions, and think about the Internet of everything. In my house, we have everything connected, the dishwasher and the washing machine and even the refrigerator, and everything is connected. And you're getting the technology that's now in your vehicle. You just think about all the changes that are happening because of this network that we're experiencing. It's really going to adjust how we do things. And, some people view some of these changes as not a healthy thing. And so I'm not trying to make a case that this is all good, but from a growth perspective, there's going to be massive innovation that's going to be occurring in the tech space and in just companies in general as they start to play on this new changing landscape. So when we start looking at all those things, that's really why I'm optimistic. There's a lot of great growth that's on the horizon. And I do want to go through just a couple little tangible things. And so as investors, we are globally diversified, which means we have money invested in US companies and then also outside the US. And we've been big believers of being globally diversified. We are in a position where we are overweight US. We've always been overweight US, but we even like US a little more in this dynamic. There's a bunch of reasons why on this sheet here, but really a couple things is as a market, we have a much higher allocation to technology and healthcare and communication services. So that's a much bigger part of our overall markets, part of our overall company. So we favor that. And the other reason is the response that the Federal Reserve has had, the response we're getting from Washington has been very unified. We have a lot of money we're throwing at this challenge. And so we think it's going to help us recover out of this quicker. We're not abandoning our international strategies, but as this markets have been really volatile and we're looking to make changes and reposition, we're looking in the US where we think that there's even some better opportunities. So investment strategy. So these are just some kind of high level things. So again, stay broadly diversified. Be careful with individual companies. I've been having a lot of questions or a lot of conversations with clients about individual companies, trying to like cherry pick whether it's from the Amazons of the world or Netflix or Zoom or Teladoc, and really saying, well, these are going to be winners. Well, one of the things I got to tell you is all those companies that I just mentioned have all done extremely well through this downturn. So they're not cheap by any stretch. And so we're getting a lot of this. And then we're having people want to cherry pick like the cruise liners and the airlines. And so my advice there is that in a recovery, being broadly diversified, and I don't mean just, broadly diversified is owning 40, 50, 60, 70 more companies will benefit over time. We do that mostly through funds, but be careful with individual companies because you can get burned. One of the things that's going to come out of this is we are going to have companies that are going to fail. We don't know which ones at this time, but there will be companies that fail. So stay broadly diversified. Don't don't inadvertently add too much risk to your overall strategy, because you can do that through diversified strategies. I also think, and this is really more of a personal opinion and opinion of our firm, is that passive management or index management, that's really been the most popular and the best performing place the last 10 years. We think the next 10 is going to be different. And we think that's the outperformance is going to come from high conviction and more concentrated active managers, those that are able to pick winners and losers, because I think coming out of this, those companies that are better managed are going to thrive, and utilizing active managers that can cherry pick the winners and losers are really going to help drive performance. And that's some of the shifting we're looking at inside of our accounts right now. 3 seems obvious, pretty obvious, right? Underweight companies with high debt, pension obligations, and are sensitive to global pandemic issues, right? So if you think about, our airlines are always going to be sensitive to this issue, of course. Our cruise ships, yes, hotels, right? There's a lot of industries that are going to be highly sensitive to this ongoing. Be careful of overweighting there, because these might be industries that are permanently reduced in value. And then number 4, large cap tech is a big favorite of ours, because they had this what we would call a wide moat, which means that they are protected because they're kind of first to market, because they're of their size. They have a much bigger leg up. But don't forget small companies. I don't have a slide in here today, but small companies stocks, they actually tend to outperform coming out of a recession, and actually outperform by a substantial number. So if you want to see any of that data, we can share that individually. But we like different parts of the markets, but just, again, stay broadly diversified. We're definitely not out of the woodworks yet with the volatility. We think we're going to still see a fair amount of choppiness and some weakness, but that will make our way through this down the road. Tax strategies. So my big, I can't give tax advice because I'm not a tax professional, but this is more just strategy. So when you start looking at your tax liability, I think the one thing that hopefully we're imparting wisdom on our clients is that we look at your tax bill, what you're going to pay over your lifetime, is something that we're trying to minimize over your lifetime, not necessarily in 1 year. So I think a lot of times we're hardwired, save money immediately, save money today. And we want to take this approach of, how do we save money over your lifetime? What decisions can we make every year that kind of maybe level out your tax liability versus having maybe a big savings in 1 year and then paying a ton in the next year? So we want to try to level that off. And that's some of the planning we do. If your profits are going to be down this year, or your income is going to be down this year, or you're anticipating a loss where you're going to have a big loss of income, some things that we're considering is doing a IRA conversion to a Roth IRA. So basically paying the tax now and then putting the money into a Roth, which can grow tax-free in the future. So that's a very individualized conversation that we're already having with some of you. So if you have some questions on how that works, and if you're eligible or not, and if it makes sense, we definitely will entertain that question. Tax loss harvesting basically is the idea of, we do have some losses in the portfolio. It's basically harvesting them, meaning selling, and repositioning the money in something similar but not identical, so that as the markets recover, you experience the gain in the investments that you made. However, you're able to harvest or take that loss, which you can use as a tax write-off. And so if you have some questions about how all that works, those are the things that our team can definitely help with. And then, you know what, if you feel like you're paying too much in taxes and you need some more creative strategies on how you can save some more taxes, talk to your tax professional. You can also speak with us. We can definitely steer you in the right direction. And this is kind of for our business clients. And so this is what I would call a business refresh. Refinance your debts, get access to the PPP program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Even if you don't think you need it, just apply for it. We don't know if we're out of the woods yet with the COVID-19 issues. So just get access to cash. If you get access to cash, you're going to be in a position where you have less anxiety because you have cash, and you're not going to worry about, can I pay my bills next month or even 3 months. So just make sure you're in a really good liquid position. Additionally, and we don't recommend this, if you do need to take money out of your IRAs and you're not 59.5 or 401ks, you can get up to $100,000 penalty free from your retirement accounts, which you can pay back over 3 years. You avoid the penalty, so that's pretty good. And then the other thing too is we've been getting a ton of questions. I have cash ready to go to work. And the short answer is, long-term money, we love the opportunity to invest today. But if it's shorter-term money, more opportunistic money, just be careful. Just be a little bit more patient. Make sure you have enough liquidity to weather this. And then the simple thing on the right-hand side, I know this is simple, this is actually the hard work, upgrade your business, make sure you're eliminating unnecessary expenses, invest in technology to improve productivity, and cut underperforming employees. That's one of the things I can tell you at Vance Wealth. We have a really well-oiled machine. We are growing out of this. We're going to be looking to hire somebody probably in the next couple months once we get back to some normalcy here. But our business is going to thrive in this dynamic, and we feel very fortunate to that you trust us with helping you make better financial decisions. But these are all these strategies that can help you improve. We have a lot more time in the office now, and so we're trying to improve how we do things, how we deliver advice to you. So if you had feedback for us, please share. Our job is to continue to improve and get better. So summary. Secure liquidity for your business and your personal. One of the questions we've been addressing every meeting is, how's your cash position? Make sure you have cash reserves. That's going to help weather this and make you feel less insecure. Improve your business efficiency. Just get better at what you do. And if you're retired and you're saying, what do you mean business efficiency? Well, you know what? Clean your house, purge, get organized, do things that kind of are going to help you clear that, I guess, make that mental space a lot healthier. So looking at your investment and retirement accounts, just focus on the long term. There's a lot of short term noise. Nobody has a crystal ball. Most people are trying to guess. Nobody knows. So it's really important to have balance. Look at growth opportunities, which we're doing, but also look at value plays. There's a lot of good opportunities out there that we're seeing. So we're excited. We're optimistic. Hopefully you can tell that from just my voice today. Develop long-term tax strategies. Be mindful of things that you can do to minimize your tax liability. And the last kind of, I guess, word of wisdom here is be optimistic and be bullish for this roaring 2020 environment that we're going to be in. And it's not going to be without challenges. Clearly, we're in this decade, and we're starting this decade off on a massive financial and mental challenge and health challenge for the world. But there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, and we'll get through this, and just know we're here to help. So hope you enjoyed this. One of the things that we're going to start next week, we're going to shorten the presentation down because we're running out of, I don't want to say we're running out of, I always have content, but we're getting a little bit more limited on some of our content. So what we're going to try to do is shorten this down and then start doing some Q&A. So we're going to switch this to a webinar version where you actually register, and then we're going to set it up for some more Q&A. So if there's some burning questions that you can't ask in this format, will be available next week. Again, thank you all for your time, and I hope this has been valuable. Please give us feedback. We want to make sure that we're adding value to your lives and making that good use of your time. So thank you very much.